Hey, what's going on everybody? I'm Macro and I have a new and improved aimbot from my old video. It's about to be a year old in like a month or less than a month, so I thought I'd update it because it's out of date and there was a lot to improve on and I have improved on. So let's just get into it. I don't want to overwhelm you at first, so let me start off with the basics. You need to have a rule to turn your aimbot on and off in the workshop. So firstly, on. Here's the basics. Don't copy and paste this. I'm going to give you guys a code to look at in a bit, but I just want to put it in your brain how it works. So basically, first thing that happens is in order to activate it, we have our condition. If the button interact is held, then this is true. So what is true, you may be asking? Well, what's true is you'll start facing the enemy player. This looks insanely difficult or hard to understand, but it's not. To make this easier, let me make this easier too. So what you do is you start facing, and who starts facing? Who starts facing is the event player, so the person that is executing this rule. And the direction they start facing is from this player to the player closest to their reticle that is also on the opposite team. So basically they're facing the player closest to the reticle, that's an enemy. So that's how it works, and this is the, if you want to change, which I use this, but I do it for you. So right, this y-axis actually helps you look up and down. The x-axis is left and right. I don't know what the z-axis is. I don't know three-dimensionally what it is. But anyways, the turn rate also, the max you can make it is 10,000, which I recommend. This also does cause a problem because it doesn't track 100%, but we'll get to that later. So this is the basic for on, and now to the basics for off. So basically we have right here is button being held, false. So if it is false, what will happen is this action, and this action is simply the event player stops facing, so that turns it off. Now the thing with this is there's a lot of things and problems. Firstly, that I add in the version I'm about to show you is that it's not a toggle, so you have to hold the interact key down as long as you want aimbot to be active. Secondly, it can attach on people through walls, so that's a problem. And thirdly, what happens is it will attach onto dead people. There might also be something I forgot, but we'll see in a second. So let's go to our aimbot 1.0, and now there's a lot of things here. I want to go over firstly my player variables. Player variables, you can access them by looking here. These are all variables, honestly. It's global and player variables. We're not using any player or global variables right now, but I will be for the final version that I'll show you in a bit. But I don't want to overwhelm you still, so I'm just going to go bit by bit. So what we have here is a player variable simply labeled toggle. This just helps recognize it. But before I show you what I do with the aimbot on and off to make it a toggle, I want to show you guys this. Basically right here what we have is drops when LOS is lost. So this is an optional thing. I've made it a quality of life. I don't know if most people want this. You might not want this, and if you don't want it, well, it's easy as that. Just you can take this rule and delete it. But basically what will happen is if you have the aimbot tracking someone and then they like go behind a wall or something and you can't see them anymore, what will happen is it will drop. So that's what this does. And right here, drops enemy when dies. So enemy bodies linger when you are after they die, so they'll linger where they died. So this just drops this and makes the aimbot stop or turn off, so that when the person dies, it's no longer tracking them. And right here, there's a lot more other than just is button held and this action. So these two are this action and this condition. There's actually 4 more things I've added to make this toggle work. Firstly, let's go over the conditions. This condition is the same. It's just is the button held true. So basically, if this button's held, this will happen. But before that, you need 2 other conditions to be true. Firstly, is the enemy alive? This helps with locking onto dead people. With this, you literally can't lock onto a dead person. So if is alive equals true, which this condition has to be true in order for this to happen. So is alive equals true. Basically, this will happen. But also one more thing. You don't want to lock onto people through walls that are like at spawn or something maybe. So what you have here is you have it so is in line of sight equals true. So essentially it will only lock onto people that are closest to your reticle and are in your line of sight. They also are alive. And that will happen if these two conditions are met right here, the last condition is that you have to press the toggle key. Okay, and onto the actions. This action is the same. It is the same as it was. Basically, you just start facing the enemy. And then right here, this is how we get the toggle to work. It took me like 6 to 7 hours to figure this out, but I got it, so it's good. Basically, what happens is, this is a buffer. I describe it as a buffer in the comments or whatever. So we have it wait 0.2 seconds and ignores conditions, and then it sets the player variable toggle to true. And in order for aimbot off to happen, toggle has to be true. So this counteracts things like when you press the interact key. When the interact key is pressed, both of them are true. The last one, the on was true, but the off was false. But you want this to be a toggle, so you just want to be able to press it, so both of them have to be true. And how we fix that is we have a player variable. And this player variable, as I said, toggle becomes true. So this aimbot off will only happen, so it'll only turn off if player variable toggle is true. So that's how we make it a toggle, essentially. And right here, for true, or not true, for off, what happens is you have to press the button, and player variable toggle has to be true. And the only way for it to be true is if on, or if it's already on. And after that, once these conditions are met, the actions will happen. There are 3 actions that I have set categorized as something. That's another like quality of life thing I'll get to in a second, but basically the first thing that happens is you stop facing, so now you have free range of motion of your camera and all that good stuff. But here we have 3 rules, or not rules, but actions that happen. The first action, you start holding the interact key. The second second action is you wait for a bit. And then the third action is you stop holding the key. So basically this makes you hold the interact key for 0.25 seconds. This ensures that you won't have the aimbot like glitch out. Because what happens is when you turn the aimbot on and then turn it off, what will happen is you have to hold the interact key for a bit for some reason in order for it to work again. I don't know why this is. It could be something with the Overwatch stuff, or just me not understanding how it works. But I figured this is the way to work. This is not noticeable in game, so you don't have to worry about it. But say you're by a symmetric teleporter by chance, then this will happen. But as you're using the interact key to turn it on and off, you'll teleport anyway, so it wouldn't matter. Then we go down to here. The last thing that happens is player variable toggle gets settled to, or set to false. So this ensures that the next time you press the interact key, because it is false now, this won't happen. So toggle off won't happen, but aimbot on will happen. So that's basically it for the toggle. So there's a few problems with this. Firstly, what we got right now, these aren't problems, but what we have are, we have a toggle, we have it drop when LOS is lost, and we have it drop when enemies die. Now, there's one problem with this, and it's that characters that are tall have default crosshairs go to different things than characters that are small and characters that are average. So every character usually has a different crosshair height. So I've categorized characters into 3 different things, and I'll show you right now. Also, before I do that, I do want to give you a code for this one in case you want this. Here's a code right here when it'll load. ZTMDF. There's a code. But let's quickly go on over to 2.0, and we have 2.0 right here. Now, 2.0, it looks complicated. It's not really. I mean, it is, but it's not. And that's why I'm about to explain everything to you. So firstly, let's go to our global variables. As you can see, we have our toggle variable, but now we have 3 other variables. First variable is tanks. Tanks, I've categorized tanks being tall characters. So tanks, Bastion, characters that are super tall. I put Zarya under tanks, but she is kind of shorter, on the shorter side, so you might want to change her to average if you want. I'll show you how to do that in a second. Anyways, we got short characters, so the shorts are the short characters, and the average are the average height characters. And what do we use these for? Well, firstly, we need to put them in an array. So basically, these variables can be anything, honestly, but we're going to use these variables as an array. So how do we do that? Well, we make the global variable, modify global variable, and then we modify that variable to append to array in the hero. So basically what's happening here is, if you don't know how arrays work, it's okay. I'll explain them just quickly so you do understand in the future if you're looking at stuff in the workshop or if you're just looking at coding in general. Arrays are a structure. I'm no professional, but they're basically a structure that have different cells, and the cells hold a certain type of thing. So we're going to have it hold heroes, but it can hold different types of data. That's just a quick thing on arrays. So what we have our arrays having, or holding, we have tanks. So tanks are holding heroes that I consider tall. So we have here Diva, Orisa, Reinhardt, Sigma, all that stuff. I also have Bastion somewhere around here. Bastion, I put Bastion in tank. So basically what this does is we have modify global variable, tanks, we modify the global variable, and that global variable is tanks, and then we want to append to array. So this basically puts this value in the array. And what that means is we want that hero, and we want the hero that we want to be in the array as the character or whatever hero you want, basically. So we do that for tanks, and then we do that for averages, and we do it for shorts. So here's shorts. Genji I considered a short because he's hunched over, and he's also like when he walks and stuff, he's short. It doesn't matter. You can always go in here, and if you want to change a character from, like, say we want to change Zarya to like an average size hero, literally all you have to do is go to Zarya, and then you go to average. That's all you got to change. Also, before I get any further, I got ahead of myself. Let me give you guys a code. Hopefully I remember to put the code up before okay, yeah. I'll just do that in editing. But basically, here's a code right here. This code will allow you to walk along with me. Hopefully I popped it up before I started talking about this, so you're already walking along with me. But anyways, that's how we put the characters into arrays. We can use this for another thing that I'll explain later, but I want to get on to the different interactions. So there are 9 different types of interactions with the character heights we have. The first is going to be average versus average. Now, let's open it up. This is not any more complicated than what we already had in the previous version. There's 2 things that are different. Technically 3 things that are different. I'll go over them quickly. Firstly, we have is in line of sight true, blah, blah, blah. So basically, if they're in line of sight, we have when you press the key, and we have if the target is alive. That stuff's from the previous version, so that stuff is not new. But here's what is new. We have make sure player is average and make sure target is average. So basically, this right here is checking to make sure that the player, the person playing the character, the event player, the player executing this rule in action is an average height character. So this does is it makes sure the array contains the global variable average and the hero of event player. So basically, the hero the player is playing must be in the variable average, and that is basically how it works. But also, you need, because this is average versus average, we have the array contains, this looks more complicated than this, but this is just the same thing with one thing changed. So we want to now check if the enemy is a average height character. So how do we do that? Well, we go to here and we look at array contains once again. This time what we're looking for is the array contains average and then the hero of, but instead of event player, we're going to talk about the player closest to the reticle, and the player closest to the reticle being from the event player to the opposite team of event player. So this is basically, in short, says that it's an enemy, and that has to be true. And then what happens is, here's where I'll show you right here. So all this is the same. All 3 of these actions are the same from the previous version. So here's the difference though. The y coordinates, or I think it's an angle. It's an angle. I assume they're using degrees too. But basically, this will be changed depending on the interaction. So if it's a short character versus a tank, so like a tall character, I have this as a bigger number. But if it's like a tank versus a tank or an average versus an average, you don't need your crosshair to move up or down any bit. You're looking straight at them. So we have it at 0. So that's how that works. Nothing changes. So basically, let me just like blah, blah, blah. All this right here is just basically copy and pasted onto here with two different changes. So what changes here is we are still looking at the player making sure that they're average, but now we're looking to see if the enemy is short. That's why this rule is called average versus shorts. So if this blah blah blah, if person is short, then this is true, so this actions will happen. And here's the difference again. Now because the player is average and they're trying to shoot at a short character, we want their crosshair to be down a little. So what we have here is it's down, I assume this is degrees, so we're going to say it's down 0.4 degrees so that they're aiming at the enemy. Okay, and then we go on to average versus tanks. Same two things are different. We have the person checking what the enemy is. This time we're checking if the enemy is a tank. So we check that the enemy is a tank, and we are also checking, or not checking, but we're making the person shoot up a bit, so 0.2 degrees, so that they're aiming a little higher towards like that head area. Because tanks are different heights and stuff, this is obviously not going to always aim for the head area for each of these interactions. A good character to always aim at is like Zenyatta, because he's like a big square that's floating, so he's like a good character to use. But Zenyatta is always going to be like in that sweet spot. Characters like Torb or Sigma, because he's so tall. But also, I do want to say, this does not work with Echo, because currently, as of now, Echo is not on live servers. So check the comments. If she is on live servers, I will have a code that basically just implements Echo into here. The only thing I'm going to do is, if you don't want to wait for me to put a code in the comments, is I'll go to put characters in array, and I'll literally just add a character and make Echo average. That's it, because Echo is an average. So I'll just add I'll copy and paste one of these babies, say average of array hero, and then instead of Sombra, I would just put Echo. So that's that. And now let's go to a different interaction. Tanks versus average. Because tanks are taller, I make the tanks look down. So first off, we're checking to make sure that the player is a tank. And if they are, we also need to make sure the enemy is an average height. And if those are true, the player will look down 0.2 degrees. So they'll look down a little bit to make up for that height difference and crosshair difference. Now, if we have a tank versus a tank, on the other hand, firstly, we check if the player's a tank, and we check if the enemy's a tank. And if so, they don't look down or up. They just look straight ahead towards the enemy. And we have tanks versus shorts, blah, blah, blah. It's a pattern. It's like the same for everything. But here is the one deviation. When it's like tanks versus tanks, they look at 0, like there's no change. Average versus average, there's no change. Shorts versus shorts, because some of the characters categorized in shorts are like very short, some of the characters' crosshairs are above the head. So for this, I've compensated by making them look down a bit too. So they'll be looking at the body of, or center of mass. But other than that, these are the same. It's just like, say we're looking at shorts versus average, we check if the enemy is average, and we also check if the player is short. And what we do, we make the short player look up a little bit. So that's basically that. I'll also quickly show you shorts versus tanks, blah, blah, blah. The shorts look up 0.4 degrees right here. So that's that. I have a few extra things I want to say. But firstly, let me get into a game and show you a few faults of this. And they're, to my knowledge, not fixable, unfortunately, but I'll show you in a second. Alright, so now we're in a game. First, I'm going to pick a tank, so a tall character. So tanks, they usually will be looking down. I'll show you the difference in the aim in a bit. But first off, let me get to where I need to go. So we're going to go over to the characters. And let me show you. You can hear me pressing the interact key right now. There's no aimbot locking on, and that's because there's no character in our line of sight. Now there's a character in our line of sight. Right here, Zarya. As you see, I pressed the interact key and I locked on. Now, you just saw there's one of the faults. I have like two faults I want to show. First fault, number 1. That fault is if you get too close to a character, what will happen is, because the crosshair drags behind, let's try and get it to happen again. There, as you can see, it falled off because the game is no longer recognizing the character as in front of us. And that's just because right here, as you can see, another fault, the crosshair is dragging behind. Oh, there we saw. LOS broke. Here, let's get LOS to break again. Oh, free range of motion. Okay. So basically, as you can see, really much there. Let me get closer to her. The closer you are to a character, the more the crosshair will drag behind. So I recommend always staying back. Let's get to her. There we go. But as you can see, it tracks pretty well. The only problem I will say, other than the getting too close to a character, is the overlapping of characters. Because the crosshair drags behind, what will happen is a character might not always, or the character you're looking at will not always be the character that is closest to your crosshair. So let me get pretty close to Anna and try and get her to lock onto someone else, or to lock onto someone else. Eventually it'll happen. Come on, get over here, Zen. There, it locked on. As you can see, it locked onto Zen, and then it locked onto Zarya. I'm not changing this. I'm not pressing the interact key at all. And I will also show you. So let me lock onto Zarya. Zarya's a tank, so we're looking up a lot, right? And as you can see, let's lock onto someone like Ana. Because the aimbot just like swapped characters without activating it on a different character, what happens is it will shoot above the person. So that's the third fault. So first fault being, let's see right here, it will lock on to other people. As you can see right here, I'm not changing it. It will lock onto Zen in a second, probably, hopefully. Come on, get it. Okay, well, it's working pretty well right now. So as you can see, it works pretty well. But the closer you are, obviously, the more it drags behind. There, it locked onto Ana. And the second fault being, when you get too close to a character, the LOS will drop, technically. Now, if you want to counteract the fault of like when you get too close and it drops, there's a way to do this easily. You literally just delete a rule. But I honestly don't use this rule. It's called drops when LOS is lost. This basically, as I went over before. So basically this rule right here says is in line of sight false. So if the enemy is not in line of sight, then stop facing the player. So what this does is it'll drop it, the LOS. I only put this here because I know a few people will want this. So that's why I added it in here. But you can delete this rule. And if you delete this rule, well, you're just like running into someone and sometimes the LS will drop. It doesn't do on Zen. I don't know why it's not doing it on Zen. Come on, Ana maybe? No, okay, there's a clump of them. Anyways, so the LOS might drop if you get too close to a character. The third fault is, say I aim towards a short character like Ana this time. Boom. I'm on Ana. And I go to Zen. I'm actually looking down because the game still thinks I'm looking at a short character. Let's try to lock onto Zarya. Because as you can see, Zarya, when you lock onto Zarya, it obviously looks a little higher. So look, we're looking at Ana, and now let's lock onto Zarya. And we're a little higher. But then we lock onto someone like Zen or Ana, and we'll be still looking at this height, which is weird. There's no way to fix this. Unfortunately, that's one of the faults that can't be fixed. So the only fault that can be fixed of the three, I'll go over the three real quickly again. First one is if you get too close, LOS will drop, and as I showed you, just delete this rule right here, drops when LOS is lost, and that will be fixed. But also, there's two rules that can't be fixed. Firstly, or not rules, but two faults that can't be fixed. So out of the three, two of them can't be fixed. Firstly, it'll lock onto other characters because the crosshair drags. The only way I can help you counteract this is by walking very far back, because obviously, as you can see, the further back you are, the less it drags behind. But as you just saw, it still isn't too good. I'm not swapping the LOS, or not the LOS, but the aim. The game is. And also, let's try and lock onto Zarya real quick. So Zarya is pretty tall. This is the third fault. It doesn't change heights if it locks onto another character like that. As you can see, we're still looking at Ana. Ana's a short, so she should be, the D.Va should be looking down. So let's try and get it to lock onto here, Zen, and then lock onto Ana. Come on, baby, go to Ana. Okay, Ana. Okay. And then when we look at Ana now, the crosshair is obviously lower because we initially started by turning the aimbot on a short character. So those are the three faults I've seen. I also want to show you one more thing, and it's in the practice range, and it's that the practice range literally doesn't work. Alright, so now as you can see, we are in the practice range. Let me show the editor. All these rules are active. So, I'll show you how they're active. First, let's kill a guy. Boom, 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 boom. Perfect aim. Okay, that's all nice. Let me try and lock onto this bot right here. I'm gonna get ready. Get ready. Why is the aimbot like lock over there? I have no idea. I don't know why this does it. Hypothetically, because there's walls between me and whatever the hell is over there, the LOS, when LOS is dropped, should activate, but it's not. So I don't know why the practice range just breaks this, but it does. I also want to show you. I didn't really. You've seen me use it, but you didn't. I didn't like exactly explain it. Here, let me lock on to whatever the hell is over there. So we're locked on. I press the interact key, and if I want to lock off, I just press the interact key again. So there's the toggle in action. So lock on with the interact key, and then let's lock off with the interact key. Boom. Super easy. Let's spam it. Whoa. Cool, right? Yeah, I have no idea what's over here. My only assumption is, for some reason, there's always an enemy this direction behind you. Like, directly. Because, the LOS being dropped should break it. But, even when you're against a wall, this happens. So, I don't know why that is. Unfortunately, this doesn't work in the, practice range. So, I'm sorry about that. And, obviously, there's those 3 faults. But those are, to my knowledge, unfixable. I don't know how to fix those. Other than the first one, when it drops LOS, literally just delete the role. But the 2 others, where it swaps the characters looking at, there is no way to fix that right now, to my current knowledge, just because the crosshair drags like behind due to the rule right here. Or not rule, that's not the right rule. Due to this being the max amount you can have the turn rate be. So maybe if you could get this higher, it would work. But you can't get it higher. Yeah, the only way to counteract that is to like stay distant from the character. So it doesn't work in the practice range, but I don't know why you would need it in the practice range. Unfortunately, it doesn't work if you do. But in game, it works in all other game modes. So it works in all these game modes. Those aren't the game modes. Works in all these game modes except for practice range. So with that, hopefully I did a good job at explaining. This video is probably very long. I'm sorry about that. I just wanted to be as in-depth as possible. If you have any questions, please ask in the comments below, because I want this video to be as perfect as possible. I recorded it like a few times because I wanted it to be so perfect. And hopefully I've done the best I can. So if you have any questions, ask in the comments below. I'll be sure to answer your questions also. Check the comments or description for any updates if I have any, like specifically the code with this and Echo in it. So if you want this to be working with Echo too, just check in whenever she gets plopped onto the live servers, and I'll just put a code in the comments. It'll be the pinned comment, so it'll be first. So that's really it. Ask questions in the comments. I will answer, and have a good one.